right, before we get into the heart of this video, let's go ahead and review real quick what we have so far. So we have our to-do list. We can add new to-do items to it. We can then toggle specific to-do items, or we can remove them. We can also add new goals and remove goals. So pretty simple app so far. And again, all of the state is being managed by Redux. And then we are just taking the state that's in Redux in order to derive the list for our view. So what our code looks like is we have our HTML here, just with some simple HTML. We have all of our library code here. It's mostly just our create store function. We have our app code, which is all of our constants for our actions, all of our action creators. And then we have our reducer functions that take in the current state of that specific reducer, the action which was dispatched, and returns us the brand new state based on that action. And then finally, we have all of our DOM code down here, which is responsible for basically taking the state of our store and then adding new items to the actual DOM so that we can see those items from the store inside the DOM itself. So at this point, things hopefully should be pretty clear for you. We've gone really slow in getting to this point right now, and eventually you might start getting worried because really the whole goal of this course in your mind was to learn Redux, but up until this point, we haven't mentioned Redux at all. But the good news is that what we've done up until this point is we've essentially recreated Redux. So Redux is just like our little library here, up top here, it's a library for managing state inside of your applications. It contains reducers, it contains actions, it contains a create store function. So everything we've done so far is exactly what you would do in Redux, except we've just actually implemented Redux ourselves. And to prove that to you, what I'll do is let's go up into our head, and I'm actually going to include a script tag here. So I'm going to paste this in here. And what this is referencing is it's referencing just the latest version of Redux. So go ahead and add this script tag right here to your head. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of our library code, or our create store function, and I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. And then now down below, when we invoke create store, passing it our reducer, instead of invoking our create store, what I'm going to do is call redux.createStore. So when we added this script tag right here, what that did was that added a global property to our app called Redux with a capital R. So when I use Redux right here, that's using the real world, the actual Redux. So what we'll see here is if I hit refresh, everything is the exact same, because our create store function was almost identical to what the real Redux's create store function is. Again, what we're doing is we call create store, we pass it our root reducer. Our root reducer is then responsible for dividing up the specific state of our store. Everything that we did before and everything that was true before about create store is still true now, even though we're using Redux's create store function instead of ours. And here's the good news. If you've been good up until this point, if you've understood everything that's going on, there's really not much more to Redux. We'll cover a little bit more advanced topics, but as far as actions, reducers, and create store, that's really the foundation of Redux. So if you've been good up until this point, then you can probably say that you know Redux now, because again, everything we've covered up until this point has really just been Redux all along. Now there's one more piece of functionality that we recreated inside of our app that actually comes out of the box with Redux, and that is our root reducer right here. So you'll notice the point of this root reducer was to basically divide out the state of our store into our separate reducers. But with Redux, what we can do is instead of having this root reducer, we can come in here and call redux.combine reducers. And it's going to behave the exact same way. It's a function. And what we do is we pass it an object, and each property on that object is each reducer inside of our app. So what we can do is we will pass it to-dos, and we will pass it goals, just as we're doing right here. And Redux, or specifically combined reducers, will be smart enough to know that we want to create a to-dos property on our state. And the reducer, where we're going to get that state from, is just the to-dos reducer that we're passing in here, just as we did with this line right here. And we want to also create a goals property on our state. And the reducer it's going to use to get that is our goals reducer, as we're doing right here. And it's also going to be smart enough to know that it's just going to pass in the specific slice of the state to each of the corresponding reducers. So what we've done now is we can delete our main root reducer here because we are using Redux's combined reducers to essentially get that exact same functionality. So we can save this again. And if we head back over to our app, again, everything is working fine because what we had before was just a recreation of exactly what Redux has out of the box with create store as well as with combined reducers. So again, I apologize it took us so long to get to this point. Historically, Redux has been really difficult to learn, which means it's also really difficult to teach. So I'm hoping by taking this very slow and methodical approach that at this point you understand actions, you understand reducers, you understand the store, and by understanding all of those, you have a very in-depth understanding of Redux because that's essentially what Redux is.